with an emphasis on the skew. And, okay, so we'll do that. I'm going to start off, I'm just going to do a simple little leg thing, but I'm just going to use the skew for all but one thing. We'll talk about that when I get there. So I'm going to put it between centers, I'm going to make it round, and then we'll go from there. But I'm just going to use the skew. Now, I want to back all that up by saying I can do that, but if I had 6 or 8 legs to do, I wouldn't do it all with a skew. There's parts that I would do with a skew, but there's parts I'd use a roughing gouge, and I would, use other tools to set up and do. So it's not like I'm afraid to use the skew. I've been there. The only thing that I've got is I started this a long time ago and I'm old. So I've had lots of years to get used to the skew and understand you're going to get a catch once in a while. But when you get used to it, there's not a better tool for giving you a smooth, flat, or tapered surface. It's the tool for that. So that's what we're going to do. We'll play with that. I'm going to introduce a couple of other little projects and things. And then, I hate to say this, but this is not going to be like a 3-hour demo, because spindle turning isn't that kind of project. If you're a production spindle turner, you should be doing, you're going to be doing spindles and newel posts and all that kind of thing. And if you're going to make a living doing that, a newel post is 12 to 15 minutes for a 4-foot newel post. You don't spend much time thinking about what to do next or anything like that. It's different. But if you're going to make $1 as a spindle turner, you've got to be fast. And, that doesn't mean that you're being sloppy. It just means every move you make has to count. Now, that's why I don't like doing production spindle work. I don't like doing the same thing more than a couple of times. Every bowl has a lot of similarities, but yet every one of them is unique and different, even when you're trying to make them the same. Just the wood is always going to get you a little bit. So that's it. Now I'm going to do a couple of things that, again, if you were just doing this, I've got the centers located on this piece and all that, and I can put it in here. This is one of those spring-loaded centers. So the truth is, if I was doing this and doing production stuff, I'd never shut the lathe off. So you just put it in, bring the tailstock up, and then when you're done, you can just stop it, take it out, put the next one in. So that's all you got to do. And I was fortunate enough to see a guy, Tommy Sorensen, he was only 14 when he started working in a spindle turning business in Utah. And he ended up owning the business eventually. But he did 4-foot newel posts with a lot of turning, a little square in the center, very common shape that they did. And he did those between 7.5 and 8 minutes. And it was amazing to watch him work. Now, he was only 6'6", and his hand would, like twice the size of mine, and he used a tool with a little short handle that he could grip in the palm of his hand. And that's how he turned. And it was just a little kind of a half round thing with a very shallow flute in it. And that's what he did. So, we can talk a lot about all the rules and all that kind of thing, but it really doesn't matter. I think a lot of it is getting used to it. It's just like learning to use the skew. There's a learning curve, but once you get used to it, it's just another tool. And the thing that it's great for is doing those straight sections. I'm going to start here, and all I'm doing we'll see if we're getting close there. I think, yeah, I got lucky. We're right at it. Okay, so I've got the square. I'm going to quit with that. We'll go back to it. Now I'm just going to start at this other end and make it round. Now, in a little thing like this, I can get away with using the skew to make it squared around and all that. When you get to 4 or 6 inch, then a roughing gouge makes a lot more sense than a skew. So, you know, but for this, there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. And, you know, makes it look like you're comfortable with this thing. Now, another thing that's going to probably make some of you think it's magic, I use both hands. I only do that because the guy that showed me a lot of stuff about turning, Rudy Asolnik, he used both hands. He said, just use your left hand when you need to. It doesn't know it can't do that. And he's kind of right. If you just, when you're learning to do this, if you'll just try it, it works too. So anyway, to come up here, I'm just now that's round. So now what I'm going to do is just get, and there's still flats there. Here, I'll shut it off so you can see it, but you can, and of course you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to do it with this finger so you don't, but you can see there's a flat still on that side. Okay, so now I'm going to work this up. And before I start doing anything there, we'll deal with this now, the transition from square to round. And generally, this would be just a round over. And I'm using the heel end. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And when you're doing that, it's okay to use either end. You can use the toe or you can use the heel. On something like that, where it's open on the other side, it's pretty easy to just use the heel, and that's kind of how I do it. When I do smaller beads, I'll do one side with the heel and the other with the toe sometimes, just because of where you're standing and whether you can see the tool or not. And I'll talk about that some more in a minute. So we're just, there's that. This transition you should be able to make clean. That shouldn't need sanded, because if you try to sand it, you're probably going to change the shape. And you're going to round over this leading edge coming into that, just because that's what's going to happen because of the pressure and the way the piece is done. So it should be clean. End of talking about that. Now, I use the skew to do that. I normally would do that with a gouge, simply because it's easier. That's all. It's just easier. And it's easier because of the shape of the flute and all that in the gouge. But either one works. So, if you want to spend the time to learn to get comfortable with this thing, that's what you can do. Okay, so now I'm going to just come in, and I want to leave a shoulder there. And this part starts to get particular now. I'm not going straight in. This acts like a plow, and it's going to break fibers on both sides. I don't care about this side right now. I want that shoulder clean and sharp. So I'm going to come in, line that up, and make that. And then I'll come back and just start with the and come right down, and that's it. Now I want to make another line over here, and on this one I'm going to angle the same way and then come in this way, and there we are. That's laid out to do a bead. Now here's the difficulty. If I come in here and try to use this way, that point, you got to be careful, because it is going to be real close to that shoulder, and if you do what I just did, you just beat up the shoulder and all that. So you can do it this way, but this is where you can also use the point, and you can see by putting that end down first, it lets me do the bead. And when you finish that bead, I'm just cleaning up the shoulder on the other side there now. The tool should be perpendicular then. If you come in and you're on the side, you probably made that more tapered than round. And I'm just going to clean this top up just a little bit here. And now over here I'm going to use the heel, because I don't have anything in the way, and I can just do that. And you just go down in there. I didn't get it balanced real well, and I know I've got the heel this time, but that's okay. And I'm just trying to get that top of that bead nice there. So there you are. And again, when you get those done, they shouldn't need sanded. It should be clean. And this is just pine. If you don't cut this pretty well, it fuzzes right up. And so there you go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is just this is what the skew is made for. And all I'm doing is getting the rest of this set up. I'm going to put a little cove in here now. And I'm going to come over and we'll come in, and again I'm pointing this. That's just where it'll start. We'll do it to there. Okay? So now, that's the beginning of a cove. Can I do it with this? I can, but should I? No. A gouge is the tool for this. This is not meant to do coves like that. Now, if you're doing a long gradual cove, you can do that with the skew. I'll play with this a little bit and show you why you don't want to use it, but at the same time, so if I'm just doing a shallow curve, I can get away with it. And but that's about the limit of what you can do with the skew on a cove of this size. And it still gets to be difficult to get a real nice transition in the bottom. And it's all because of the shape of the end of the tool. That's like a little captive ring on there. And I can't, I'm not going to say I can't. It's difficult to get the bottom of this. Whoop, there you go. That's my catch for the day. It's very difficult to get this to transition because of the very shape of the tool. Okay? So if we just go with a spindle gouge, now it's because of the shape of the tool, it's open, and you can see I can make that transition pretty easily with just the gouge. And there's what the skew did for me. Cut a little thread. So again, that's clean cut. You don't need to sand. You don't need to do anything with it. And that's why the gouge is just easier. The skew, because it's a straight cutting edge, and we'll talk about that in a minute too, but the gouge is still the tool for that. Now from here to this end, it's all going to be the skew. Okay, so now let's talk about that for a minute. This skew is a slight radius. There's only one reason. It's easier to use than a straight line. If I bring this up to make a cut and I'm starting in, first thing, if I'm doing a long straight, I'm using the bottom half and more likely the bottom third. And the whole reason for that is that this is resting on one edge down here. The rotating force is trying to push it down. As long as I stay down there, it's a very minor force and I can control it. If I start to get up beyond halfway, then it wants to rotate that down. And you don't cut a screw thread, you dig a hole. That point will rip a big chunk right out for you. Of course, I've never done anything like that. But the real point is that we're dealing with that bottom third. Now, if I, and one other thing I'm going to mention right now, most of the time when I'm using the skew, you're going to see that I keep it perpendicular to the piece. I'm not around like this. There's a good reason for that. The rotating force is coming down at it. If I come around here, it's trying to push it that way. It's harder for me to control that than it is if I keep it perpendicular. Okay, so it's not because you have to. I'm just telling you I have better, easier control when I just keep it perpendicular. Okay, now that curved edge, as long as I keep this perpendicular, only one point of that curve can be tangent to that curve. If I have, and I think I've got one out here. I've got a little one. But this has even a slight curve, but it's a straight line. And if I bring it around and get it in the wrong place, that whole straight line is making contact, and again, it's going to catch. With this, even if I come around some, only one point of that curve can be tangent with that curve. And you can still control it until you get too far up on the point, and then it's a different force, and it's still going to dig it into the wood. Okay, so let me get this going, and we'll fix that little catch. And I'm going to clean that. Okay, so that's my major diameter. So what I'm going to do now is start working from this end and make that taper for this bottom of the leg to just tie in. So I'm just going to come in, come back, and each time I'm just coming back. You can hear distinct changes in sound when you hear the high-pitched, if you can still hear it. I don't hear it like I used to. But that's because I'm taking a deeper cut and trying to get rid of wood, and it's putting a lot of force on the bevel. And I can make it louder. But if I just get the cut started, and then I want it to just be a light cut all the way down. So now, one other thing I'm going to mention now so you can start watching that. I'm not moving my hands when I'm doing this. My hands are here. I've got one finger kind of running along the rest. I don't like this rest all that much because this is in the way. So I'll have to cheat to get around that. But my point is, I am locked in. I get this tool right where it's just starting to cut. And then I just move my body. So the movement as I go down is entirely in my legs, not my arms. I'm not doing this. If you do that, it's a great way to get a roller coaster effect on that piece instead of a straight line. So you've got to we're almost there. And I'm taking my time. Okay, now I'm starting to get to the thinner part. I'm going to move my hand up here. My fingers are just touching the wood. My hand's not getting hot from friction because all I'm doing is using that to anchor the end of the tool as well. And the other thing, I can feel if I've left a little spot that's not cleanly cut very easily. So there it is. And again, this is pine. Right here, there's a place that it's fighting the grain. So what I'm going to do is switch and go the wrong direction just to see if we do that, can we clean that area up a little. And I think it fixed one side and put it on the other side. So, yeah, this side's beautiful. That side's much worse. And so it's just where the grain's running out. Not going to fix that, and you might have to actually sand a little bit. Now, another thing that I want to just mention in passing, and that improved it a little bit. So, wouldn't take much quick sand on it now. I'm trying to make this end match this, just visually in diameter, and it's pretty close. And so, here's 3 legs that are not the same length, but they're close. This one I wasn't trying to do the same thing. But I didn't measure any of these from the top down, but the rest of that, and these were done a couple of weeks apart. So it's just, if you're gonna do a few of these, you get a combination of whether you're doing beads and coves or coves and beads and all that. And it just works. It's not that hard to get pieces that match, and I didn't lay anything out. It's just by repeating it, it takes care of all that. Now, one last thing I want to do before we go to something else here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to line this up about right there. And now I'm going to taper this in just slightly on this side. And there's 2 reasons for this. I'll get to that in just a second. And here I'm going to use the long point because it's easier to get down in there further and clean up the bottom of that. Now, I said there was 2 reasons. One, it's just a decoration, but the big reason is you want to round this over. If this is a leg on a stool or whatever, when you drag it around, if you leave it straight, if that catches on anything, it's going to split it right off. You do the curve, it'll stay nice and sharp and clean for a long time. So, there it is. Now, I'm going to switch gears a lot. This is a piece of green wood. I'm just going to place this in here. And I'm being very careful about centers because the truth is I don't care. What I'm really doing, this is green wood. And if I'm teaching a beginning class like we're going to kind of do later, I like to start with these. And there's a reason for it, and that is that it's green wood and it's not going to not split. But it's softer, it's easier, it's more forgiving. If you get a catch, it's not as bad. And so That's why you do this with green wood. And I'm going to do a little of it with the skew, and then I'm going to switch to the gouge. I know that there's a knot there, so I'm just going to get that off of there. Now, trying to do a bead this large with the skew can be a little more challenging, but you can do it. And one other thing just dawned on me. This lay's about 4 inches too short. I would very much prefer the centers up here. And I just wasn't even thinking about it. Not that we could change it easily, but my point really is you need to know where you're comfortable. They say usually elbow height, and this is not too bad for elbow height, but I like it just a little taller. It just, you don't have to reach out to, you know, when I put the tool down, I've got to kind of get up like this to make this work. Now, this is a spindle gouge. And you see how easy that cut down through with the skew when you're, because of the shape of that end, it's like a snow plow, and if you're trying to cut too deep, it can't shear that wood off. It's just pushing it against the side of the tool. With this, it does just fine, and there's no reason not to do it that way. So now I'm going to go in here, and I'm just getting this established on this side, just like I did the little bead that I just did on the spindle. This is where now I'm going to come over here so it's just a bead, but it's transferring into a cove. I'm not going to put a shoulder on it. And in this case, because I've got a gouge, I don't have to switch tools, and there's no long straight sections that I'm trying to do. And I'm going to do one other thing for you in just a moment here. Get this side. I'm not going to switch hands. because I know a lot of you are going to say, I can't do that with my left hand. So I'm just going to do it with my right hand and show you that you can still do it. It's just not quite as easy. And I'll explain why in just a second. Get this down there a little further. Now, I want you to pay attention to what's going on here. If I don't switch hands, if I switch, I just swing from my hips and roll the tool, and it follows it naturally. If I'm here, to make this follow a straight line, it wants to make me move my arms away from my body, and it's just harder to get that fine control because of the motion you have to make to do it. You see, when I have to raise the tool a little bit, and instead of just being able to do that gradually, the tool's against me. Here, I can just roll the tool and the handle just slides right into place. It's just different. I'm not trying to talk you into one over the other. I just want you to understand what's going on. And when you start trying to turn those shapes, you'll find it makes you do weird things with your body. Not that you can't, it's just not as easy. And here, the real challenge when you're doing this is to make these two cuts end up in the same diameter down here at the bottom. And I still want that to be a little thinner there anyway. So now, and I just switched hands again, it's habit for me to do that, so. And if you want, you can come up here. All right, you. Must be a knot in there. It's certainly hard. Green wood's not supposed to be that hard. Now, if I was teaching a class, we'd do that, and then we would drill this out so you could put dried flowers or weeds or something in it. But the idea is that you're still making beads and coves, and the wood's softer, so it's easier to cut. And if you make a mistake, you get a catch, nobody really cares. It's just, it's just soft wood. And this piece is pretty hard, even though it's green. So anyway, still the same kind of motions. Now I want to take, okay, when I started doing all this, the tools were the old Craftsman carbon steel, and most of them were forged so that they, if it had a flute like this in it, that had been forged out of a flat piece. And so it made it curved, and that's what they look like. Kind of like this. So you see, this was a flat piece of metal that they formed, but this is high-speed steel, not carbon steel. Carbon steel is great, like for carving tools, it's what you want, because it will sharpen to such a fine edge. But, you know, I've just been playing around here, and I've already made kind of a mess, and there's a lot of shavings. To make that pile, if you're carving, takes you a couple of days, you know. So in the probably the early 80s, they actually started manufacturing lathe tools that were high-speed steel. And that hadn't been true, so you had to sharpen a lot. And again, I mentioned Rudy Asalnik. He first started turning in the 30s when he was in college. And at the college, he said they had this salesman who came around who had high-speed steel. And they were knives for the planers and joiners. And that was like a new thing, to have high-speed steel. And he got him to give him some, and he made tools that looked like that. He just would go to a grinding wheel, and you just freehand those on a grinding wheel that you dress around, and then put an end on it. And that's what he used. And when I first ran into him, I said, where do you get tools like that? And he said, well, you make them. So I bought some high-speed steel, which was another adventure at that time. That was like 81 or 82. And at that time, high-speed steel was just getting introduced, and it was in bowl gouges to begin with. And that's one of the things that changed turning. Bowls, most of you have turned some bowls, and even with high-speed steel, you've got to resharpen fairly frequently. Well, with carbon steel and doing a bowl, just because of the diameter and the amount of wood you're removing, every 30 seconds to a minute, you're going back to resharpen. And so high-speed steel became the thing. Now they've got the little carbide inserts and all that are good and bad. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, there's multiple kinds of high-speed steel. Most of this stuff is M2, but this isn't. When I was messing around trying to locate this stuff, there was a place, it was Teledyne Vasco, and they were in Pennsylvania. And they agreed to make some steel for me. It is a hybrid. It's not a true high-speed steel, and it's not a carbon steel. They wouldn't tell me what the alloys are that are in it or any of that stuff, but it holds an edge like crazy. And it's easy to sharpen. So that's what that's all about. So I'll put it away now, and I'll use a regular spindle gouge so you can see me using them. I like this because I'm so used to it. And there's one thing I will mention, but when I'm doing beads, I'm always on a corner, just like a skew. Now, if I just pick up a spindle gouge, it's round. And what I found, and I've adjusted to using the others now, but this, when I would want to make a straight cut in, you just lay it on its side, drop the handle, and it makes it easy. You can get a straight shoulder real simple with this tool. This one, because it's round, you have to pay real close attention to the flute and when is it perpendicular so that you can make that same cut. Now, you can still do it, but with this one, it's just lay it there, hold it with your thumb, and you can cut a shoulder quick and easy. And we're just going to go back and play with the skew again. Just making it round. You can see when it's this small, making it round with a skew is not any kind of a challenge at all. Okay. I don't want to take those down too small just yet, so. This is a little parting tool that used to be a joiner knife. Again, it's high-speed steel. And now this is where this gets to be fun. All I'm doing is trying to take away the fuzz that's on there where the parting tool starts to enter the stuff. And I've seen guys do this with the Skew, but you still get V's. You can't clean it out and get it so that it'll actually hold some honey. Okay. I'm really holding my finger there so it doesn't ring so much and drive everybody crazy. And there's a cove shape with the Skew. And again, it's just a gradual cove shape so you can do it and it doesn't cause any real problems. One thing I will mention too, when I'm doing that shape, this thumb, I'm pushing down on the tool a little bit. But everything else, my hand back here is just barely holding this. You don't need a death grip. As long as, you know, the tool is cutting without a lot of pressure, it will survive that just fine. Okay. I'm going to switch on you now and go to a gouge. That's a $6 tool. This is 1/4 inch square high-speed steel that they sell for lathe tool bits in extra long lengths. That thing's loud. You can get them in 8-inch lengths. Normally they're like 2.5. And I used to, when I would teach a beginning class, everybody would make one of these because they come in handy for all kinds of things. But like here, that long point, I can get down in there more readily just because the tool is so fine. And now I have room so I can come in from this side. And we can get that down pretty close. I don't want to go too far because I've got to do this end now. So, the skew. That's what's supposed to be the emphasis. So, you use the bottom third, maybe half, but third's the best. Now, if you flip it over and you're using the long point, you're using the third the other way. So, you stay away from the center, is what it amounts to. We could go on doing more examples of pieces, but it's still the same principles every time. And the little honey dipper thing, that is a cove that I turned with this, but it's such a gradual, there's plenty of room for the tool to fit in there. When I was doing the cove on the, this is the one we did. When I was doing this cove, you simply can't do that, and I could have gone to this little skew and gotten down in there, but I'm only allowed to use a quarter of that, right? Because if I get up toward the point, it's going to catch. So it leaves you such a little control surface, and it's just not easy, and you're still going to tend, instead of getting a nice continuous curve, to get a slight curve and then a straight line, or mighty close to it. More of like a V than a U. So that's why the gouge is the tool to do those kind of things. So that skew has places where you can use that point, but the truth is the little gouge that I just used on the ends of this, you can see, you can get that fine point way down in there. So, you know, the bottom line of this whole thing is, unless you are willing to put in the time and practice, you're never going to become proficient with the skew. You don't just pick it up and use it. You already know I like this to not be a straight line, a slight curve, because it's easier to handle, and it just makes everything easier to do. But sharpen. And the sharpening is not that difficult with this, but if it's a straight line, and with my grinder, there's two jigs, one's 25, one's 15. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. But if you just stand your skew up like that, and we have a table that has a groove in it for this to sit in, and this holds it at the angle to give you, in this case, 15 degrees on the end, because it doesn't tilt it as much. If you do the other one, it's 25 and it's tilted in a little further. And so it sounds crazy. It's not the side angle that we're talking about there, it's the end for the shape there. But it's controlled because this on a CBN wheel is using the side of the wheel, not the face. Okay? Now, that makes doing a conventional skew real easy. You just go in, you put it on the other side, you go in, you make the two sides even, and you're done. And it's very easy to do. With this one, you set the flat platen at the angle you want, and then you just rotate the tool. And as long as you get good pressure in one point and just roll it, that's all you have to do. And you flip it over and you do the other side. That was how I sharpened that, and it was done by hand. But here's the other thing. Because of the nature of a skew, when it gets dull, it's just a fine little line. And if you've got a hone, this happens to be a diamond, but you can get these in CBN as well. They're cheaper than the diamond, but when I got this one, diamond was the only name that was in the game then. Or you could use a slipstone, but the diamond with the high-speed steel, you just simply lay it on there and go around that edge, and that's it. And I can see a shiny line right around the end of that tool. So it doesn't take much. And there it is, it's sharp again. I'm so used to using the corner and controlling where that end is, and with an oval skew, it rolls on the rest. It doesn't sit on one angle. And I just know, because they didn't exist when I first used the skew, and It's a completely different motion. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm really not. If you get used to it, it's okay. But when I roll this, it's very predictable. When I roll it, it's not, because the back side is changing the relative angle to the end all the time. And it just, I would get not horrendous catches, but little catches all the time when I was trying to learn. And I thought, this isn't worth the effort. I can do it fine with a regular skew. So I'm not saying they're bad if you're starting. If you're used to a flat skew, then I'm not a fan of them. And I've talked to, other turners that feel the same way, just because they've already paid the price and spent the time to learn to use these. And there's some debate over whether the curve is good or bad, and I don't know. I know for me, I like the curve much better, but there are some good turners out there that like the straight skew, and they've obviously just gotten used to it, so doesn't mean it's bad, but It does depend, I will say that first. And the biggest thing I did is that leg that's 1.5 inches. So I've got it real close to center, which means when I put the tool on and then put it on its side, it's probably at 10 or 11, probably not quite 11, but 10. Now, if I'm doing a 4-inch diameter piece, then you actually want the rest a little higher, so that you're up more on the upper part of that curve, just because it's a longer radius. And if you're down too far, it's much easier. If you set that rest too low, catches come by more readily. And since you're not looking to get catches, having the rest up a little higher than you would normally use with a gouge is probably gonna, so it's a good question. And I have to be honest, I don't think about those kind of details. I just knew where I wanted to rest and I put it there and didn't even think about saying anything. I just did it. And you noticed I didn't change it through all the various pieces. So again, bigger diameters, raising it slightly helps. And you got to take into account how thick is the tool as well. Skews usually don't get to be real thick, but if you had some of those 1.5 inch wide skews, and I will get back to that, but go ahead.
Do you chamfer the edges?
Yeah. Yep. Every one of these has the edge, just the sharpness taken away. It's not round, but there's no sharp edge there. I can, it'll slide readily on the rest, not make a line, and then you keep catching in that line. And a lot of skews, when you buy them new, they're sharp as could be on the edge. And I'll mention something about that in just a second. Okay, so let's go to rounding this edge. And I'm going to talk about this in relation to the skew and all that. It's a non-woven abrasive disc. And this one, I think, is a 9C, I think it is. It's pretty stiff. I can't flex it very easily. They make them that are softer and will flex more easily. This one, you can see, has done a few corners. It's round. I'll put it down here for the camera. But that's just worn away because of doing like the edges of skews and things. And that's how I get that. I just put it in there. I always do this turning away from me, Simply then I can go right down here and it doesn't catch on the sharp edge. If it's turning toward you and you aren't careful, yeah, talk about a catch. So I'm just want you to know. So I use it turning away, and there's no danger of these disintegrating like a grinding wheel, so you don't need guards or anything on it. And that's how I do all those corners on anything like that. Rio Grande. That's the place. They've got them at a very reasonable price. But recently, there's this thing called Amazon. They've got them. And they've got a better price than Rio Grande. But Rio Grande has a real online catalog, and it'll give you all the info of how dense they are, which relates to how flexible they are, and all that stuff, so you know what you want to buy, and then you go to Amazon and buy it. Okay, so I know that's a long story for that answer, but that's what I do. I used to get them from Rio Grande, and their pricing seemed to be pretty, these are like 40 or 50 bucks. Now they're like 80 from Rio Grande, and I think this one was $39.95, I think, from Amazon. And they're the same.
That was a lot. That's not new.
Yeah, well, this one's not, but I just bought one. This is the one I put in my bag, and I've got one mounted on a motor that stays there. See, I've got this set up. I can just put it in the drill chuck, and we can put it on the lathe and do what we want to do. Non-woven abrasive. It's like the Scotch-Brite. It's the same kind of fiber, but they're much denser for power. Okay? So this is great for a number of things, and that's what I want to mention. And the real reason I brought it's because of the class. And if you've got a brand new Skew and you're in that class, I wanted that so we could round those corners over on your tool and not force you to use it with that sharp square edge. So that's why I brought it. But I want you to know, and I'll pass this one around. This has got a double bevel. So there's a heel and another heel. Then I polished that with that wheel. And I want you to see it and feel how slippery that makes that. And so I didn't even bring bowl gouges today because of what we're doing. But on the inside of bowls, if you don't do something with that heel, it leaves lines where it compresses the wood fibers, and you can't sand it out. You sand and sand and sand, and you put finish on, and there's these lines that show up. You just take your gouge from the grinder to that wheel and go around it, and those lines disappear because it softens that edge and it doesn't bruise those fibers. It just slides over it. And you don't have to do it every time you sharpen. You get a nice little round edge like you'll see on that tool when it comes around, and it lasts through 2 or 3 sharpenings, and then you go and do it again. So it's just easy. You can do it with a hone, but a hone going all the way around that tool takes a while, and that wheel does it in 10 or 15 seconds. So that's the whole thing. Do you want me to pass the wheel around? 3M makes them. Yes. I don't think that one is 3M. The 3M tend to cost more, and they're not any different that I can tell. And just to let you know, these wheels are used, they're used in industry for what we're doing, but to break sharp edges and all that kind of thing. But they're also used in the jewelry industry. It's how they polish a lot of different jewelry findings and and pieces. Woodturners Wonders has them made in Ohio, and we ship them to Woodturners Wonders. I don't. Yeah, they're just available through them. They come with different hole sizes, and most of them are 1/2 inch, which won't fit on a 5/8 arbor on some grinders. So I'm just warning you about that. But they do have them, and I can't remember, and without taking this apart now, I'm sure this one's a 1/2 inch because that's what this is. But they do make them larger, and they sell plastic inserts. So if you're trying to do different things with it, you want one that's portable and one that's on a motor, you can get them with different hole sizes.
And the compression washers on each side, do you make them?
No, they came with this arbor. See, this is a made arbor, and then this is just a piece of 1/2 inch, because I can put a drill chuck in here and grab it and use the lathe to spin it. So that's why this one is separate. I've got, we're getting deep into this now. I've got at home a motor with a double arbor. On one side I've got one of these. On the other side I have rubberized abrasive. And rubberized abrasive, it's exactly what it sounds like, but it's softer rubber. It's not hard, but it's not as soft as this is, you know, where I can compress this with my finger a little bit. And for polishing, you can't beat rubberized abrasive. It's, again, used in the jewelry industry a lot. That's why Rio Grande has that stuff.
Rubberized abrasive.
Yep. Yeah, do a search. Yeah, all kinds of it will come up, and they, based on the color of the wheel, it relates to how fine or coarse the abrasive is within it. There's gray and there's red. For us, it's not all that big a deal, but if you, like, I do metal spinning too with the wood lathe. And to spin metal, you have to have a steel bar that's got to be mirror finish. It's got to be really smooth so that you press it against the metal and form the metal. If it has any imperfections at all, it'll rip the metal, tear into the surface. And so that's why I've gotten into all this stuff. So that rubberized abrasive we use to polish the spinning tool. And it just, what used to, you had to go through all the steps. You started with like 100 grit and then 150 and so on. That rubberized abrasive wheel, you just take it from forged and polish it. And it's great. So, you know, it just saves hours of tedious work, so. But thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave.